The biggest financial mistake of my life took exactly 8 minutes to make. My name is Bill. I am 83 years old, and I have spent the last 2 decades living with a number that never leaves my head: $140,000. I want to be clear about something before I go any further. I am not telling you this story because I am struggling. I have had a good life, a long marriage, children who turned out better than I deserved, and enough in the bank to sleep at night. I am telling you this because I made a decision at 62 years old that I did not fully understand, and nobody in that government office thought it was their job to make sure I did. If you are anywhere near the age I was when I walked through that door, then this story belongs to you as much as it belongs to me. The year was 2003, and I was tired in a way that is difficult to describe to someone who has not worked for 40 years with their hands in their back. I had done factory work in my 30s, moved into logistics management in my 40s, and spent my 50s traveling between distribution centers for a company that treated its people well enough but kept you on the road more days than not. By the time I hit 62, my lower back had been giving me serious trouble for years. My knees were not much better, and I had this feeling sitting in my chest that I had earned the right to stop. My wife Barbara was still working part-time at the school district. We were not desperate for money, but I looked at that Social Security number, the amount I had been seeing on those annual statements for years, and I thought, why am I waiting? I paid into this system for 40 years. This is mine. I am going to go get it. So on a Tuesday morning in October, I drove to the local Social Security office, took a number, sat in a plastic chair for about 25 minutes, and when my name was called, I sat down across from a woman who was perfectly polite and clearly had a full waiting room behind me. I told her I wanted to start collecting. She typed some things, asked me a few questions, slid a form across the desk, and I signed it. The whole thing was done in 8 minutes. I drove home, told Barbara it was official, and we had a quiet dinner that felt a little like a celebration. What I did not know, what that woman never once mentioned, was that I had just permanently reduced my monthly Social Security benefit by roughly 30%. Not temporarily, not until some review date, permanently, for every single month I would ever collect for the rest of my life. Here is how the system actually works, and I want you to follow this carefully because the numbers matter. The Social Security Administration has what they call your full retirement age, which most people in my generation hit at 66. That is the age at which you receive 100% of the benefit you earned over your working life. If you claim before that age, they reduce your benefit permanently, and the earlier you claim, the larger that reduction. At 62, the maximum reduction is 30%. In my specific case, my full benefit at 66 would have been $2,100 a month. When I claimed at 62, I locked in $1,470, $630 less every month forever. I did not do that math on the day I signed. I wish I had. Because here is what that math looks like now that I am 83. I have been collecting Social Security for 21 years. That is 252 monthly payments, each one $630 smaller than it should have been. When you multiply those numbers out, you arrive at something very close to $159,000 in lost income. And I am still alive, still collecting, still receiving less every month than I earned. Now, some people will immediately ask about something called the break-even point, and it is a fair question. The logic goes like this. If you claim early, you receive more years of payments. So even though each payment is smaller, at some point, the total amount collected evens out between the early claimer and the person who waited. That break-even point for most people falls somewhere between age 77 and 79, depending on the exact amounts involved. I crossed my break-even point about 5 years ago. Every year I live past that line, the total cost of my early claim grows larger. If I reach 90, which my doctor says is not out of the question given my current health, this single 8-minute decision will have cost my household somewhere between $200,000 and $220,000 over my lifetime. But there is a dimension to this that I did not fully understand until a few years after I claimed. When Barbara and I sat down with a financial advisor for the first time, and she explained something that genuinely shook me. When I die, Barbara will be entitled to receive a survivor benefit from my Social Security record. That survivor benefit is calculated based on my benefit amount, the reduced amount I locked in at 62, not the full amount I would have received had I waited, which means the decision I made to start collecting early, a decision I thought was about my own retirement convenience, also reduce the financial safety net my wife will depend on after I am gone. She will receive less every month in widowhood because of a form I signed in 8 minutes at 62. That is the part of this story that is hardest for me to sit with. There is also the tax piece, which most people standing in that office at 62 are not thinking about clearly. I was still doing some consulting work after I retired from my full-time job, and it turned out that having Social Security income on top of consulting income pushed a portion of my benefits into taxable territory. Up to 85% of your Social Security income can be subject to federal income tax depending on your total combined income from all sources. Claiming early while you are still earning anything, a part-time job, freelance work, investment income, can create a tax situation that further erodes the value of those early payments. Nobody mentioned this to me either. I want to stop here and say something honest because I think honesty is the only reason this story is worth telling. Claiming Social Security at 62 is not the wrong decision for everyone. There are real circumstances in which it makes complete and rational sense. If you have a serious health condition and there is a genuine likelihood you will not live past 75, the break-even math shifts considerably in favor of claiming early. If you have no other income and you need the money to pay your rent and your grocery bills right now, then taking what you can when you can is not a mistake. It is survival. I respect that entirely. The choice I made was not catastrophically wrong for my situation. I have been fine and Barbara has been fine. What I object to, what I have always objected to, is that I made the choice without being given the full picture. I sat across from someone whose job was to process my application, and she did her job. But no one in that building thought it was their responsibility to make sure I understood the long-term implications of what I was signing. So I am going to do what that office never did. If you have not yet claimed Social Security and you are somewhere between 60 and 65 right now, I want you to do one thing before you make any decision. Go to ssa.gov and create your personal account. Inside that account, you will find a page that shows you 3 numbers: the monthly benefit you would receive at 62, the benefit at your full retirement age, and the benefit at 70. Write those 3 numbers down on a piece of paper. Then calculate the difference between your early claim amount and your full retirement age amount. Multiply that difference by 12, and that is your annual cost of claiming early. Then think honestly about your health, your family history, how long the people in your family tend to live, and whether you have other income sources that could carry you for a few more years. That is not a complicated analysis. It is 30 minutes of arithmetic. And it is the conversation I needed to have in 2003 before I ever sat down in that chair. I think about that version of myself sometimes, the 62-year-old with the bad back and the tired eyes, and the feeling that he had waited long enough. I understand him completely. He worked hard and he was worn out, and he wanted to feel like the system he had paid into his whole life was finally going to give something back. I do not blame him. But if I could sit across from him the morning before he drove to that office, I would tell him to take 30 minutes and do the math first. I would show him the numbers on a piece of paper, $2,100 versus $1,470. And I would say, look at that difference, and now imagine it multiplied over 20 years. I would tell him about Barbara's survivor benefit and what it would mean to her in her 80s to have that $630 every month. And then I would let him decide. He might still have claimed at 62. Maybe the back pain was reason enough. Maybe the consulting income would have made him decide to wait. I honestly do not know what he would have done with the full picture. But he would have made the choice with his eyes open, and that is all any of us can ask for. I am 83 years old. I have a good life, and I am genuinely grateful for it. But $140,000 is a real number, and the decision that created it took 8 minutes. And somewhere there is a version of this story where someone in that office took 10 extra minutes to explain what I was signing. I hope that this is that 10 minutes for you. Take the time, run the numbers, make the decision that is right for your actual life. Just make sure it is truly yours to make.